What's up, YouTubers and plant lovers? It's Justin, and today I wanted to talk to you about how to care for my Yucca cane plant. Now, the specific plant that I have in front of me is known as the Yucca cane plant. And you can kind of tell because of its thick, bulky cane. It kind of resembles a cane right here that it kind of grows off of. But normally you can either see the yucca plant growing this way out of a center stalk in a cane, or a lot of the majority of the foliage will kind of just be down in the center of the ground and not really coming off of a massive cane like this one is. These plants are native to around North, Central, and South America. They're very versatile. They can actually be grown in the USDA zones of around 4 and on up. But yeah, as cold hardy as they go, some can go to around zone 4, but a majority of them cannot be that cold hardy. I've heard that if you introduce them to the cold kind of slowly, they're a little bit more resistant to the cold, but this guy, the one that you'll find indoors mostly, and so does an indoor plant, they're not really that cold hardy, so you'll need to make sure that you do bring it inside for the winter time. But you can leave it outside during the summer and spring once the danger of frost has passed. But they just are beautiful plants. I mean, look at this striking green, deep green foliage. I always love a plant that can speak with its foliage and not just off of the flowers, and the yucca cane can actually do that. They are very pretty. With some yuccas, you'll see kind of a little bit sturdier, hardier leaves that can actually kind of draw blood. This one is a little bit more forgiving, but the sides can probably draw blood if you rub them the wrong way, and the tips of the points can actually draw blood too. So you'll need to be very careful. And actually, when I was moving this plant to be recorded, I actually poked my eye with the leaf, so be very careful whenever you're around the plant. They do get to be really large size. When brought indoors, they kind of grow a little bit slower as an indoor plant, but they do get relatively large, especially if you do have them in the ground. I believe this kind of yucca will actually be the largest yucca that actually can grow, and I think that's around heights of 40 to 50 feet, somewhere around that area. But like I said, indoors they will grow a little bit slower, and that's a really good thing with these plants too, because you can propagate them really easily. Just take yourself a really sharp knife or like a saw or something and just kind of cut into it. If it becomes too large indoors and you want to trim it down, all you need to do is just take a nice sharp sword or knife or axe or anything you have and kind of cut into it and sever it and cut it off. And then you can get some kind of pruning paste to seal up around it so it won't actually get any kind of infection or rot or anything inside of it. And the actual top part that you cut off, you can just stick it back in the ground or in a new pot and have a whole new plant that way. And after you've sealed the bottom part, new shoots will actually grow off of the side, kind of like this one has right here. Now, as you can see, the older leaves do have a little bit of discoloration to them. My mom actually moved not too long ago, and this was her plant. So I got a really good score from Mama Green Alchemist, but she took really good care of it. These plants don't need a whole lot in the way of light. They're actually marketed sometimes as a low-end kind of light recipient. So I've actually had a friend that says he grows his in a north-facing window. I've never seen the plant, but he says it does really well there. Mine, I have it underneath the LED grow lights in the back room for now since it's the winter time. But in the spring and summer, I will set it out on the porch, because that's what my mom did, and she said it got really great light there, and the leaves all around look really nice. And the color, you can tell, is a very deep green, so it does look really healthy. But one of the hardest things to care for with this plant is the watering cycle. Now, established plants are very drought tolerant, so you need to be mindful of that, because if you water them too much, you will succumb to rot and the plant will die. So they always say that if you're going to water your yucca, make sure it's dry completely down to about 2 to 3 inches before you add any more water whatsoever. And like I said, if you're not sure, it's better to err on the side of caution and probably water it in a couple of days rather than right when you're thinking of it. Set a reminder on your phone or have it sitting somewhere that you'll see it so you'll remember to water it. But like I said, use a moisture meter or your fingers, and as far down as you can reach with your fingers, it needs to be completely dry before giving it more water. And a plant this size, I'd probably give it about a quart, maybe 2 quarts of water, but I always want to make sure that your soil is completely dry. I believe she got this at Lowe's, but you can get them at IKEA, Home Depot, any place like that. And typically when they are sowed, they're not really sowed with something that's kind of in mind for the nutrient value or the moisture level. So oftentimes they're kind of packed with peat or some kind of coconut coir or something like that. That's really not very healthy for the plant when it comes to the nutrients. So after you get it, you really should repot it. But this guy, like I said, he's had the same nutrients in here, and we feed it regularly. But when you do repot it, you need to go with something that's more conducive to cacti and succulents. But just because those drain quicker and don't hold on to moisture a whole lot, and they let the water just run completely through there. So make sure you do not have a saucer under here either, because they do not like to stand in wet, soggy soil or have wet feet. So the water needs to run away as fast as possible. And if you do have a saucer, just make sure you drain the saucer after about 5 to 10 minutes of it sitting there, because at that point the plants pretty much drink about as much as it really needs. But just be very mindful of your water. Now, as I said, in the summertime and spring the plant can be outside, but as the heat goes up, your water intake level needs to go up too. But just as I said, it always needs to dry out completely before giving it more water. Fertilizer is very important with these guys too, especially because they do put on a lot of mass kind of in the growing season. If you have them outside where they can get a good amount of direct sunlight, they will put on a good amount of mass. And if they are doing that, you kind of want to feed them regularly too. I feed mine probably about every 2 weeks. So I will continue with this new guy too. Probably about every other week to 2 weeks, somewhere around that area. A general all-purpose fertilizer does work pretty well. But if you can find something that is marketed towards cacti and succulent, that could probably suffice as well. Pests are very... I don't even know what to say on that, because there's mealybugs, you have spider mites, you have aphids, just all kinds of stuff. So these guys are prone to pests. So make sure that you are kind of giving it a once over every once in a while, just to make sure you don't see any kind of filaments, anything that might suggest that you do have spider mites, or any kind of white marks that might remind you of mealybugs. And of course the aphids will probably bother your soil as well. So make sure you kind of nip that in the bud and maybe spray the plant off after you purchase it, to make sure that you don't see anything, either with your garden hose or set it in the bathtub and kind of spray it over, because that's what I did when I brought it home. I always like to seclude my plants or isolate them for a couple of days and then clean them up if they look like they might need something, or just to even err on the side of caution to make sure that I'm not going to spread anything else to my other plants. So definitely make sure that you do kind of separate them for a couple of days to make sure you're not going to spread anything around. But if this is your only house plant, I think you'll be fine. Just as long as you kind of look the plant over before you buy it, and make sure you look down in where the leaves kind of attach, and look around the cane, and make sure you just don't see anything kind of crawling around on it, or any aphids kind of flying out around the substrate, because that's probably a plant that you're probably not going to want to have. Now, as you can see, my cat is very interested in this plant and he loves it. He's chewed on it before and there's never been an issue, so I don't believe these plants are toxic to animals. Although if your cat or dog does nibble on it, it actually can get them to actually drool a little bit and maybe even vomit some. So if you do have a pet or a young child that likes to put things in their mouth, I probably wouldn't keep this plant. Though if you did, you need to keep it away, maybe up higher or something like that. But if they do nibble on the leaves, it can give them stomach cramps and diarrhea, so be careful with that. Now, in discussing the leaves, as I was saying earlier, the older ones that look a little kind of crusty and brown and maybe like they're dying. If you see a lot of that on your plant, you probably do need to give your plant a little bit more humidity, or else you'll probably see a lot more dead and dying leaves, because the plant does like a little bit of humidity. And the plants of this size or larger, you're probably going to have a humidifier next to the plant in order for it to get the right amount of humidity. A kind of pebble drip tray probably won't suffice. And if you're seeing a lot of yellowing of the leaves, that normally indicates that you're giving your plant too much water. So you want to slow it down and not give the plant as much water as you have been, and let it dry out just about completely before you give it more water. Root rot is kind of a big deal when it comes to these plants. You got to remember they're typically from around more dry, arid areas, so they can, especially if they are established, survive long periods in between waterings to help them through droughts also. Now, if you do see a lot of yellowing and a bunch of kind of spots through the leaves, that typically indicates that there is a fungal infection with the plant too. So that's a little bit harder to deal with, but there are ways to deal with it besides actually throwing the plant out. And if you do have a problem like that, be sure to email me or message me or leave a comment, and I can tell you how to address that problem if you do have that problem. But as I was saying earlier, that I will be replanting this plant in a couple of weeks. So be sure to be on the lookout for that video, and I'll show you what all you need to do to transplant your yucca plant and keep it healthy also. Well guys, that's really all I have to say about this plant. They can be a little bit root bound, that's not going to be an issue with them, but I will probably replant this guy in a couple of weeks, so I will post a video on that and show you how to do that and everything that I need for it. So make sure you tune in for that video and be on the lookout for it. But until then, make sure you guys leave me a comment and let me know if you've ever had any kind of success or failures with the yucca cane plant, and maybe even post a couple pictures or something like that. I do enjoy seeing all your guys' pictures and your work and your gardening. And while you're at it, make sure you leave a comment or hit the subscribe button and the like button. That helps me out a ton. I really do appreciate every single one of them that I get. Until then, you guys have a good one. Take it easy, and don't forget, always plant prudently. Thank you, YouTube.